Good morning, good afternoon, good evening around the world. My name is Doug Brunke. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Chamber. We do events. We strategically connect our members to opportunities and we help and support in any way that we can. And one of those latter things is that we provide to our members opportunities to connect up with not just clients, which is our main focus, but also ways to improve the business. And we can all improve the business. And at the beginning of the year, what better time to rethink what you're doing, to understand what's going well, what's broken, and what's not working or working as well as you want, and make some fixes right now. And so I can't think of anybody better than Dr. J.C. Baker to help us through some of those issues. We were just talking ahead of time before the recording started that his last program was, I think, one of our best that we had at Global Chamber, not to set the bar too high, but the fact that he's so knowledgeable and so engaging. And I love the way you pull people in. So get ready for a great ride. Get ready to learn a lot today and really be able to think about your business in ways maybe that you haven't yet. So, Dr. Baker, I turn it over to you. Thank you for your support and collaboration, and thank you for all the great work that you're doing to help people be successful.
Well, I appreciate that, and thanks so much for that segue. Doug, can you see my screen?
Can do.
All right, fantastic. So I'm going to jump in, and guess what, Bill? Bill, you won the lottery. I don't know where you are, Bill, but because I can see you, you now become like my Vanna White from the Wheel of Fortune because you're going to respond for the masses. So when I ask a question or I want to make sure something's understood, I'm going to use you to kind of assist me with that. Do I have your permission?
Not only my permission, but in as much as I am in the Cincinnati area, my condolences to your snow story. I would suggest, though, that next time you shoot higher on Vanna White.
Oh, shoot, I don't know, man. I'm telling you, she did it for a long time and did it with the best. So everyone, I don't know exactly where we are globally. What I do know is that what I'm going to talk about here today transcends essentially all business types, regardless of industry and size. As you can see my screen, I am the owner of the Business Hospital and the Business Hospital Institute. It's exactly what it sounds like. I have a PhD in business and leadership. I am nearly completed with my second PhD in business and artificial intelligence. I'm only about 60 days or so away from completing that endeavor. So the point is, I am an actual business doctor, and I've got a team of practitioners. These are just some of my senior practitioners that you see there, but we provide business treatment to businesses of all scales and size and scope on 15 countries. We've been doing this nearly 9 years, over 1,600 patients. And so we have an aggregated database of understanding what are the parameters of making a business healthy. I invented the Business Health Index and the Investment Health Index, which are two indices that allow us to essentially determine what is the health metric of a business, just like with the body. And so the image that you see here is just like in the physical body, regardless of where you are in the world, if you were to pass out, if you were to injure yourself, there's certain key factors that are systematic for the human body. Well, in business, it's the same thing. And so I take the approach of standardizing the treatment for business. And so we're going to look at that today, even with how we manage teams and how we manage those teams effectively. So if you hear me using medical terminology, that's only because we look at a business similar to the human body, and I do not want to confuse you in that way. So as we move forward, you all join today because you want to learn how to effectively manage your teams. And so therefore, I'm going to help you understand how to establish uniformity, which is really important. Number two, we're going to enhance your mission and vision with some of the strategies and techniques that you learned today. And then we're going to increase your operational efficiency. So I imagine those three things are important. Bill, are these three things important? If they're garbage, tell me they're garbage and I should talk about something else. You think they're good. All right, fantastic. So because I can't see everyone else, whatever Bill says goes. So therefore, this is important. So we're going to jump in from here. Now, I am going to ask for some participation. I do like volunteers. I do not like hostages. So that means that if you jump in, I'm going to be nice to you. If I got to pull you in, it may look a little different. The point of it all is to make sure that we learn it. And so we're going to move forward from there. Definition of leadership. I'm going to take a few definitions here that are globally recognized as the etymology and definition of leadership, and we're going to break these definitions down for understanding. Leadership has been defined as the behavior of an individual when directing the activities of a group towards a shared goal. Someone, any volunteer, tell me what's the most important word in this sentence. I'm going to sit here till someone tells me what they think is the most important word, because I need your participation on this.
Yeah, we have a volunteer that said behavior, and I think I would be leaning in that direction.
Okay, so that's in the chat. Let me see if I can see the chat. Okay, I got you. So we've got behavior there, we've got directing, we've got shared goals. Directing would be 2. All right, so the correct answer is behavior. Can anyone tell me why it's behavior? All right, so it'll define everything else. Anyone else? Sets the move from top down, okay?
Yeah, I'll take a shot, and that is, if a leader doesn't affect behavior, then they're not a leader.
Okay, I understand exactly why you say that. Let me add to that a little bit. The reason why behavior is the most important is because it's observable. It is something that you can actually identify and put a pin in and say, I know what that is. So we're not talking in terms of good or bad yet. We're saying, what can we see?
Mhm.
And so leadership is defined as behavior because leadership has to be observable. You have to know what you're looking at and say, I identify with that at some level. And then we're going to direct it toward the shared goal. Let's go to another one. Leadership has also been defined as the influence of human relations. I will tell you that the most important word there is influence, and we're going to talk about influence in more depth later. So we're going to bypass this a little bit, but influence is the most important, and you're going to want to write that down, because when we talk about it later, it's going to matter to your own behaviors. Other scholars define leadership as a process to apply power and influence to make people work together and accomplish common goals. What is the most important word, singular word, in this sentence? All right, we've got process. Anyone else?
I'm not sure if this is correct, but make seems like a strong word there.
It is. Make is a very strong word, and you're going to see why a little bit later, but good guess. Not right, though, Attorney Demetrius Evans, but I'm glad you participated.
I'll take
Give
a
me
shot
one
at
more.
accomplish.
You said accomplish. All right, so Doctor of Startups and Pivots, you are knocking it out the park right now because it's process, which is what you wrote in the chat was process. Can someone tell me why it's process? Miguel, take a shot. Jim, take a shot. Mr. Robert, take a shot. Somebody take a shot and tell me why it's process.
Because it can be
Absolutely, that's why.
repeated. It's something that someone
Absolutely,
can
that's
see and
why.
they can do over and over again.
Yep, that's it. That's a nail on the head. So now what we're gathering is that it's an observable behavior that impacts influence that can be done again and again and again and again and again. So when we look at how we learn as the human condition, but even an animal, you can teach a polar bear how to ride a tricycle. Why? Through a process. Then you can observe that behavior. No differently than how you tame a lion. We learn how to say our alphabet with a process, or how to tie a shoe through a process. So by definition and implication and indication is that leadership is something that can be duplicated. So we make statements such as that person's a natural leader. No, that's not accurate at all. That's just what you feel and think about it. It does not make it true based on empirical data and information over hundreds of years. Is that what we really should be saying? What is my process that can be observed to impact influence? That's the way you should view leadership. So if you're managing a team, you have to say, well, how am I going to manage them? Well, I manage them with a process, with behaviors that impact influence. Is this combination making sense, or have I lost anyone? And if I can't see you, then I have to assume that you understand, because I can't tell. So Bill and Doctor of Startups, does that make good sense to the two of you? Yep, it does. Okay. So as we move forward from there, we have definition of a follower. Now, let me tell you what's funny about this. Almost nobody wants to be a follower. You look through social media, you go to a seminar, you go to a team, everybody's like, don't be a follower. If you have told somebody not to be a follower, then you have sabotaged them, and you should be ashamed of yourself, and you should be flogged. But you didn't know any better. So you did what you thought you knew you should do. Here's why. When we're talking about managing effective teams, that symbiotic relationship is that somebody's leading and somebody's following, and sometimes the leader is following and sometimes the follower is leading. Now, I come from a sports background, and one thing that we've always known in sports is that, especially at the higher levels, is that you could be a head coach one day and you could be a coordinator the next. You know, you lose your job and you still want to work in the profession, you're not working for someone. If anybody has ever been a manager at one time and an entry-level person at another time, you know that you weave in and out of leadership and followership. So therefore, we're going to define follower. One definition is one in the service of another. So if you ever served in for someone else, that made you a follower. And if you holistically think about service or servitude, it's actually admirable. So as we think about being a follower, we think about, I am offering a service to someone else. And as you manage your team, everyone should see themselves as, I have something to offer and I'm offering it as a service for someone else. So that's a matter of paradigm shifting and perspective. One that follows the opinions or teachings of another. Now, one thing that we know breaks down in businesses globally is the lack of training. You have no idea how much I've heard. They don't even train us here. Man, the training here is bad. They ain't taught me nothing. And that's how people feel. But in these instances is that if you lean on the opinion or the teaching of another, that actually defines you as a follower. And at some point, we had to learn something from someone, and we had to take that and make good sense of that, of our own understanding, and then work to either duplicate or execute on what we've learned. And therefore, as you manage the teams, we have to make sure that what is clear is that if I'm a CEO, or if I'm a supervisor, if I'm a director, if I'm a micro or boutique business owner and I have 3 employees, whatever it might be, is that I have a way of seeing the world and a way of saying this is how something should be done. That person is now listening to your teachings or opinion. And that is, once again, an admirable trait, is to say, I would like to follow that. I would like to get in line with what's being given. Next is one that imitates another. The word imitate has a very negative connotation because it connotes that you don't have originality. You're an imitator. It seems like you're a fraud, you're a carbon copy. But the reality is, when you want someone to do something well, and for those that have children, you'll understand what I mean, is that you model certain behaviors. What I want you to do is this, let me show you. And then you go through the behavior, a visual act of displaying the behavior that you want them to do. And if they do it, they've imitated you. So it's not a negative thing. It's actually show me the way, and therefore I can get in line and follow the way. So therefore we can reach this common goal. So therefore a follower is one that imitates another. If you are concerned about how to manage an effective team, by definition, you would have to model that behavior. Now, that doesn't mean that you live in that behavior. For an example, let's say you have a car dealership and you want to ensure that your sales consultants are cleaning off cars in the snow. You might model that behavior to say, hey, everyone, this is what it looks like to make sure that the cars look good. That doesn't mean that you're doing it every day, but you can at least model what you want done, whether you do it or you can bring someone else in, but you model the behavior so that they can imitate it. Next is a person who accepts the teachings of another. What's important about this is the acceptance. That word is really important. And oftentimes, as an appointed leader, as a supervisor, a director, we assume everyone else's acceptance. We don't implicitly get it. So for an example, I did this technique and strategy right before your eyes with Bill, as that I told Bill what I wanted from him. I saw that he was receptive, and then I asked his permission. Bill said, not just that, I'm going to give you even more than my permission. Well, what does that mean is that he accepted it. Does this make good sense, or am I losing anybody? I don't want to be the rambler. All right, we're good. Okay, good. So with that, I do want to ask you a rhetorical question. Obviously, don't answer, but have you ever sat your team down individually in a very intimate and serious moment and asked their permission to lead them? We automatically assume because they take the job, they've already been working there, they took their wages, that they want to follow or that they want to behave. And that is not accurate. We must gain acceptance. Does that make good sense? Are there any challenges or anything going against that? Because if so, I can break it down even further. We good? All right, fantastic. Next, someone who supports, admires, or believes in a particular person, group, or idea. This is very important. This entire definition is ridiculously important. You better not sleep on any of it. One is the support part and understanding if you're gaining support for whatever the shared goal is. So you literally, as an appointed leader, regardless of position, have to go and say, do you support this? Remember, we want to manage an effective team. It's hard to manage that team and manage them effectively if they don't support the movement. Do we agree or do we disagree? But do we understand that out of laziness, ignorance, busyness, distraction, lack of focus, we don't actually get support? We don't force them to verbalize their support. We just automatically believe we have it. And then we get upset when the team does something contrary to what we want them to do. So the problem is we're at fault, not them. Make any sense or no? That does? Okay. Next is admires or believes. So it's one thing to say, yeah, we'll do that. My 10-year-old daughter, she is notorious for saying, sure. She'll sure you to death. Do you want to go see Moana or Wicked? Sure. Well, she might accept it, which is the other one, but she doesn't admire it, support it, or believe it. She's doing it because of a hierarchy, and I'm just going to make her get in the car and take her to the movies. And she kind of doesn't have a way out of that. Well, our team members are the same, and we'll talk about why that's the case. So we have to determine if what we're doing and who we are is admirable, and you'd want to use words like that. Do you admire what we're doing? Do you support what we're doing? Do you believe in what we're doing? Now, I don't want, this is not a reference for religious purposes. This is a reference for intellectual purposes. But in the Bible, the scriptures tells us that we are justified and condemned by our words. So what that means is you force your team members to use their words to determine their position. So in the event that you are managing them and they begin to behave in a way that is contrary to the operation, what you can say is, you said that you believed in this. You said you support it. And that's where it becomes important from there. Any questions about that sentence at all, that definition at all? Any challenges? All right, let me get to skipping. Out of the Urban Dictionary is one who doesn't think for themselves. This is what most people think about when you say follower. So out of all the good things that a follower could be, immediately the brain says, I can't think for myself. I am a leader. And they begin to reject authority. So we have to understand how people are programmed in order for us to navigate around that programming. So if we already know that this is how they think, we have to diffuse that. I'll give you an automotive scenario, and the reason why I'm using that twice is I spent 7 years as director of sales at a really large franchise in the Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana region. And I was bad when I first got there. I mean, it was confusing how bad I was because I was already good in 4 other industries nationally. And I thought, well, heck, the automotive industry is the easiest ones. I mean, I learned the pharmaceutical industry in a way and grew in that so quickly that I completely underestimated the automotive industry. But what I learned in my first 60 days is that the consumers hate car people because they lie and they got taco meat on their chest and they wear tight gold chains and they're going to steal money from me. Right? That's what the people thought. And so because of that, here I am working to provide a good experience. And the whole time I'm a snake to them. If I understand their thinking, I can diffuse the thinking. So it became real easy to say, hey, you don't trust a word that's coming out of my mouth right from the beginning. I know you don't. And guess what? You've been programmed not to trust it. So you tell me how you want this to go. You control the whole thing. And my job is to support your way of thinking. By the time I turn over that struggle, that power struggle, then they can give it back and say, wait a minute. I now can let my guard down and begin to trust the information because you're providing me the method of control and I don't feel like I'm being taken for a ride. But it's understanding their thinking. Well, we know that our team members in this instance believe that being a follower is not a good thing. So we have to diffuse that privately and intimately so that we can manage them effectively so that we can see the behaviors that we model, which they imitate for one shared goal. Make good sense, or am I going too fast? Are we solid? Fantastic. Robert, I hope we're solid. Jim, I hope we're solid. I want to say this name right. Is it a Saye? Correct me when you feel like it, Mr. Asai. Is that right?
Osai.
Asai. Am I making sense to you, Asai, or am I talking
Yes.
gibberish?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Fantastic. I don't want to leave anybody. Any other questions about this slide before I move on? Nope, we're good. All right, next. We're going to look at different leadership types. And so what's amazing about leadership types is that almost no one knows them. If I were to give this Globinar quiz, we're probably going to fail it. And it's not because you guys aren't smart. It's because the topic of communication just isn't available for most people. So we're guessing at it. One thing I do know, and I don't know how much you all know about martial arts, Bill or Doctor of Startups, Pivots. You guys familiar with martial arts at all?
No.
You aren't, but Doctor is. Well, in martial arts,
I am.
you know what you're doing or what you're looking at based on a stance or based on a punch or based on a kick. So you could say, oh, that's Jeet Kune Do, or that's Imute Shotokan, or. Does that make good sense? Is that there's certain punches that don't get thrown in Imute Shotokan like they do in our niece. On and on. So with that, leadership is no different. If there's any sports people here, if it's football, you know what offense you look at based on the set. If there's 3 receivers, that's one set. If there's 3 running backs, there's another set. So visually, you can look at it and say, oh, I know exactly what technique that is. I know exactly what offense that is. Leadership is the same. So when we defined it as a behavior, we're going to go through the behaviors right now of some of the most prominent leadership styles. First one is autocratic, which is unilateral decision making. Now, when we say autocratic, this is the micromanager. This is the my way or the highway person. In this instance, how many of us, put it in the chat, cut your screen on, thumb me up, do something so I know that you love people that micromanage you? Anybody like that?
No.
Boo, hey, Boo is so funny. But no, you guys don't like that. Is that a good leadership style or a bad one? That's how I say, yeah, I don't want that at all. So we all think that's bad. Is that safe to assume? Yep, maybe, potentially. Right? In your world of emergencies. So if you've got a kindergarten classroom, the kindergarten teacher should be autocratic. Those kindergartners should not be allowed to rule, vote, say anything. They're 6, and 6-year-olds have no idea what they're doing. It would be chaos. So autocratic would work in a kindergarten class. What about in a military field? We've got a mission, and there's 30 of us out there. That has to be autocratic in order to get the mission done. So what happens is that we have a scenario where autocratic is ensuring that there's one voice, one direction, and there is no opposition to that authority. It is neither good or bad. It is situational. Does that make good sense or no? We kind of agree, or do we vehemently disagree? All right, we got some thumbs up there. Fantastic. So that's what autocratic is. So if we go back to behavior, we have a scenario where if you see someone that is, it's my way or the highway, and I'm going to overstep and watch over everything you do, you don't have to feel anything about it. There's no emotion attached. All you have to say is they are autocratic, and that's the style for whatever this company is, or for whatever this goal is, or this project or assignment. And mentally, you know exactly what you're looking at and you know how to operate. You now know how to follow. You can say, oh, if they're autocratic, I'll make sure they see everything that I'm doing. I'll turn it in before they even ask for it. I'll bring them over and say, hey, Frank, come take a look at this. Frank, remember when you told us to do it this way? This is exactly how you said done. It's completed already. Now, as a follower, you're imitating what it is that they want because they're autocratic. Make good sense? Now, Miguel, I want to hear your point. Do you mind talking about the point that you put in the chat?
Well, if there's no feedback from your followers or from the people you're leading, I don't think that that's good leadership. I mean, you can, because you're the leader, you can certainly have people do things your way, but I think you're missing you're missing opportunities in learning and incorporating into your leadership style other points of view.
Well,
If
that
you're
would be
unilateral,
correct based on context. There are many contexts where learning from the people that you're leading is irrelevant and dangerous because they may not have enough information to even have an opinion.
yeah,
So if
but
I
you
go
can.
back to the military example, and I have been given instructions on how to carry out a mission, and I have not told the 7 or 8 people that are following into that mission all the details that came from on high. Maybe the information is classified. What that person needs to know is, where do I need to be? What do I need to do? And my responsibility to the team is to do it exactly how I'm told. Can't have an opinion, can't have a thought. I got to carry out the duty.
You're right. In military, it cannot be that way. But as a leader, you have to have the knowledge and the capacity to decide if the feedback that you're getting from your followers is good or not.
Right? So now let's say we're in a factory, and my factory, my job is to make widgets. Well, in that instance, it's not so much about what that person believes as a widget maker. It's about making the widgets in a timely fashion based on decisions that were made in other scenarios that you are not privy to. So autocratic would work in a factory setting when that factoring setting is to duplicate a process for efficiency. So that means the follower has to understand even the leadership style that they're connected to, because if they're not connected to an autocratic style of leadership, then they shouldn't take an autocratic position. And that should be explained. It's like, hey, everyone, since I'm the head coach, what I need you all to do are these things. You play offense, you don't play defense. So if I make a call, you don't know why I made that call, but I need you to run your pattern the way I need you to run it. So this way, if people understand the style, they can perform around that style. I'll give you another one. Democratic, decentralized, and universal. This means everyone has a vote. I submit to you that everyone having a vote is good and it's bad. And you say, why? Well, what can we say is bad about everyone having a vote?
Everyone has a say, and then it sometimes takes longer to figure out what direction you're going to go in.
Absolutely. So because of that, it's good because everyone has a say, but it's bad because it can be inefficient and not effective. So you're managing the two. Not to mention in a democratic, not everybody's vote counts the same. So even though I voted, it still might not feel like I voted, because every time I vote, what I want never goes forward because my vote isn't big enough. But on the other side, you had a vote. So you should be happy that you had something to say. And so that's what you're managing. Miguel, I saw your point. And so in that instance, and I do want to respond to that, Miguel, is that when we talk about better solutions is not an absolute, it's subjective. Because it might be better for the person working in that position, but it might be worse for something else. And if you don't have clear vision and a comprehensive scope of all the parameters and inputs, your better can actually be a detriment. I'll give you a great example of what I mean. One of my patients invented a technology that would help with transferring information from nurse to nurse in hospitals. Because in hospitals, they still write post-it notes and on napkins what happened the shift before. And so as they created this startup, the startup sounded wonderful. Like, absolutely, it makes sense to have a universal system that transfers information regarding the care of a person in healthcare, because it helps everyone understand what happened, what to do, down to what the family needs are, their behaviors in a hospital, medication, mood swings, on and on. Well, the more we investigated it, as we went to help our patient, we found that there's a reason why there's no universal system, because that makes information discoverable. So hospitals are intentionally not doing it, because if they make it discoverable, it increases lawsuits and it reduces finances. So I could listen to my nurses, or I could say, just do the job. I may not tell you why I'm telling you to do that. So better is better or better is worse. Nothing is good and nothing is bad by itself. Everything is contextual. So what becomes important when you're managing an effective team is making sure that everyone understands the context. In Cincinnati, everyone is mad at the owner of the Cincinnati Bengals pro football team because he looks like he doesn't want to win. But he operates his football team at a surplus every year, and he generates massive net profit. He's like, why do I care about a Super Bowl? I'm not going to go in the red trying to win a championship. A fan would hate that. The family loves it. So it depends. It's all contextual on what's good or bad. I got to skip to Malu. Servant, environment of empowerment. A servant leader will put themselves in your position, and then they will do your job and they will serve you. Once again, not good, not bad. A servant leader, for an example, if this was military, they would be on the front lines fighting. They would carry their musket and they would go out into the battlefields. Well, we know that's good because it demonstrates patriotism, but it's bad because our leader might get killed and he's been put at risk. So in these instances, is that a servant leader might be doing the job of the entry-level person, and that is admirable, and people do respect that. But I might need you to be downtown in court dealing with legal and building out finances and not taking phone calls. So therefore, the company can't move and scale. So once again, it depends. But if you see someone that's like, hey, I'll go with you guys on Saturday and help you do whatever it is you're doing, that person is a servant leader. And you would have to know that. So if you behave that way, you know that you're a servant leader. Next is shared leadership, which is equal delegation. Once again, everybody is worth the same amount. However, everyone is worth the same amount. So if we decide to make a decision and go forward, it might be a gridlock because between me and Attorney Evans, we can't come to a consensus. She got a point and I got a point, and now we're gridlocked. So that can stop progress. But I have an equal share, they have an equal share. So one of the things that I know to be really, really bad amongst partnerships is they'll say, I'm going into business with my cousin or my best friend or my colleague, and we're going 50-50. And I say, you aren't going 50-50. Somebody has more risk, more say-so than the other person. You just haven't defined it yet. And so there always is a hierarchy, but if you go 50-50, you might have a legitimate problem. Next, laissez-faire. Love this one. For the sake of my time and what I got to cover, most people think the lack of leadership is bad. I submit to you that the lack of leadership can be good. So once again, nothing is good or bad. It's all situational. Laissez-faire says, I won't do anything for you but provide you the resources you need, and I will let you go. This works really well when you have a team of experts, people that are highly respected in their field, or you brought them in to carry the torch on something that you know that they can do very well. You give them their resources per their request, and then you would let them go. Right? What would you do if I was not here? So, Doctor, your point is, if I'm gone, how would you handle this? How would you behave? But typically, this is reserved for people that have experience doing things at a high level. Where we tend to fall short in the current age and the current generation of thinking is that everyone wants that. Right out the gate, they want to be left alone. And they haven't been groomed enough, they haven't demonstrated enough that they have the ability to do so. Although they feel, for no legitimate reason, that they can. So it's good in one instance, it's bad in another instance when you have novice or inexperienced people working without guidance. Next is transactional, rewards and punishers. I can't speak for the entire world, but in the United States of America, this is our primary form of leadership. You do something good, we hook you up. We give you a promotion, right? That's what we do. We give you a couple more bucks, right? It's a bonus. You do something bad, you're in trouble now, right? You get a fine, you get fired, you go to jail, we give you a whooping. Something happens bad that you don't like. So that's what transactional happens. And so you see a leader that, I tell you what, you do this, there'll be something nice on that check. And now the person revs up and they go and do it. Transactional is awesome and garbage at the same time. And the reason why is that people are motivated by rewards and they do fear punishment. And you can get them to perform based on that rationale. However, if your reward isn't high enough, your reward actually turns into a punisher to you. Does anyone know what I mean by that? So let's say you're going to offer that person a $500 bonus to perform. They're like, skip that bonus. They're going to take off of work or not do something else that you want them to do because the $500 doesn't mean anything to them. So all you did was incentivize them not to behave appropriately. Or if you say, if you don't do this, I'm going to do that. They're like, so what? I don't care. Do it. Now you have taken away any level of what you might have considered to be power, and you put it into the hands of the team member. So you have to understand transactional when you use it and situationally when to use it. The last one I'm going to cover is transformational, which are 4 constructs. I'm going to talk about these 4 constructs on the next slide. I submit to you this is the most powerful. From here, transformational leadership, these 4 constructs, I remember them by an acronym of MICS, M-I-C-S. The first one is inspired motivation. This is when you are doing something to people that gets them excited about behaving. So if someone says, well, I'm not really a vocal leader, I kind of just lead by example, you need to not ever say that again. One reason why is that, and is based on your belief system, but it all is connected. It's electromagnetic radiation, it's the spirit, or it's energy. What I can tell you is whatever you decide to call it, it's a very real thing. Electromagnetic radiation can legitimately be measured now with today's technology. Electromagnetic radiation is when a dark cloud comes into your office because Nancy walked in. You'd be like, here come Nancy, she get on my nerves. Well, that feeling is electromagnetic radiation. Or if there's a superstar that shows up and you feel excited and you're like, you know what? I saw it, Doug, thanks. Is that this is where we got to go and I feel like I can do it because of another person. That is the inspired motivation piece. So if you want to manage your team effectively, you got to inspire them. And you only can inspire them by knowing what they view as aspiration. And so it takes a lot of work on your side to do so. Next is idealized influence. And I told you all we would talk about influence. Out of the sake of time, I'm going to tell you that influence is internal and not external. Most people believe influence is external. But the reality is we are connected to whatever we're connected to. The idealized part means you see something, you connect to it, so therefore you behave. I'll give one example. If you take a criminal that's really good at math, just the way that their mind works, the way that their DNA is structured, they can understand numbers. Well, if that person has been introduced to crime, they will do criminal-like behaviors surrounding math, whether it's dealing drugs or embezzling funds. If that person is connected and can see where they can have a successful life with numbers, they might become an accountant or a CFO. The reality is the influence is numbers. The idea is external. So as a leader that's managing teams, what you have to do is find out how many things or what components your members are connected to and provide ideas that they can then attach with and then perform for the benefit of the team. This is a complicated skill set. I could spend 2 hours on this skill set, but just know it's idealized influence. And if you go back to our definition, leadership is how we make people do things through influence. So we had heard earlier by Attorney Evans, she said, I think make is really important. People will do things when they're influenced to do it, which by implication means you made them do it. Individual consideration is the third. That means you're taking into account every member on the team and you're treating them accordingly, equitably. So what one person needs may be different than what another person needs, but you give them both what they need in order to impact their influence so that they can perform. Next is intellectual stimulation, and that means you're always teaching them something that they can latch onto that forces growth out of them. That means as the appointed leader, you can never stop learning because you have to always continue to give to the subordinates and the followers. Any questions about the 4 constructs before we move along? All right, next, we got 5 types of power here, which I'm pretty certain most people didn't know there were 5 types of power. So now you know. One is reward. We talked about that. People are legitimately moved and will be persuaded by reward. So that is a power that you can put on someone. Next is coercive. So if you force by, threats or by action in a negative way, people they will submit to that type of power. Legitimate is given based on the authority that you hold. For an example, oftentimes a child will automatically submit to the parent because the parent has legitimate power over them because they created them. So just like a supervisor that hires, that person comes in automatically saying, I know I need to answer to that person. That's my direct report. So they have power over me because of their legitimate position. Next is reverent, and reverent is the strongest. That's when you look at someone and you admire them. That's why athletes, musicians, famous people have so much power in our societies, because people like them, they want to be them, they idolize them. And so therefore, when they say something, they tend to get the masses to move. That's reverent power. It's the same as a pastor or another religious faith-based person. You reverent them, so therefore they can hold power over you. Then last is expert. That's when you know something at a high level. You know, if a person is a doctor, or if a person has made $3 million in the field that you're trying to get into, on and on, is that you look at their expertise and you say, I'm gonna listen to them. I'm gonna do what they say. So as you're managing your team, you have to be conscious of which power am I using? So when they hear me speak or they watch my actions, which one of these am I using? And am I using a combination of them? Which ones are most effective for my team? I submit to you that you might not necessarily feel like a coercive person, but you might have a team member that only responds to coercive action. You know, once again, if I use a sports analogy, there are some players, when you say, you know what, Bill, you're really good at this, they'll perform better. And you got some that you say, man, I can't believe you call yourself a ball player. I never see nothing that bad. And then they play better because you spoke negative to them. And. So you have to be conscious of the 5 powers, how you behave, and what they receive in order for you to push toward the shared goal. Limited time, I'm rolling, I'm almost there. There's 3 commitment types. Not sure if you knew it, but there is, and this is very important. First one is normative, which is an obligation. So if you've got someone that shows up to work every day, but they don't do one thing at all, I mean, they're a stubborn mule, that person is committed. Now, some people will say that's not commitment. Commitment is, wait, you asked, no, intellectual stimulation is not negative. It is making sure that you always have something to bring to the table that they were unaware of that makes them better at their work. Make sense, Miss Evans? All right, next, so normative. If that person shows up every day and doesn't do anything, for the fact that they showed up made them committed. So you can't say, I want your commitment. They're like, I'm here, ain't I? So I want to hear your mouth, because they're obligated to be there. If they were not obligated to be there, they would be somewhere else. So you have to understand, if a person in your team is obligated to be there, make them say it. Now you know how to use that. And say, well, heck, since you got to be here, I'm going to obligate you to some other things too, or you won't be here. And then they'll behave and then you'll manage them effectively. But you got to know that that's what they're doing. And that means that you have to be intentional enough to obligate their behaviors. Continuance is next, and that's fear of loss. Some people do things just because if they don't, something else is going to happen. And you have to know that. So if they don't believe in everything that you have or what you got going on, and you want them to believe in it, and they're like, look, man, I'm just scared that I'm going to lose, my girlfriend, because if I ain't working the type of job she thinks is good enough, she gone. Well, that's a very real thing. And you might have to use that to say, look, you don't have to worry about that part because of this part. And now you know how to manage them. And so they will be committed as long as they're not losing whatever it is that they hold valuable. The last commitment type is effective. And this is the one that we most commonly think about when we say, I want you to be committed. That means it's in their heart. They're going to do it no matter what. Think of an artist that's always drawing, and they're going to draw whether they get paid for it or not. A musician is going to play the music whether they get paid for it or not. They are committed to the industry or to the skill set or to their livelihood. This is what you want out of your team. So that means that as you are hiring or as you are reevaluating and reviewing your members, you want to talk in these terms and say, look, are you here because you got to be? Are you going to lose something? Do you just feel like you were born to do this thing, or were you born to do something else? And that's going to help you understand their levels of commitment. So here we go. Acknowledge that following is critical for corporate success. Make sure that we speak in terms of following and knowing that there are times that you are following as well. Understand and confirm leadership style. So know yours, confirm yours, articulate it to your followers, and then have them articulate it back. And lastly, recognize your commitment with honesty. I would ask for questions, but we don't have time. So you can email me or you can give me a call. But you email me, we respond to emails literally within 2 to 3 hours of an email popping in. I'm going to stop my share. Doug, I'm going to shut up and pass it to you.
What and as I understand it, we have two different links, so there won't be anybody joining in from the other event. The other event's already set up, so we're good to go for at least a couple more minutes.
Okay.
What's the next step for people? You've got your information. Did you say you've already got it in the chat area?
Yeah, I just put my
How do
personal
people get a
email into
hold
the
of you?
chat. And in this instance is that there's no way possible that you all would know what I just gave you inside and out if you were unfamiliar. So I'm hoping you took one thing. So whether you said, hey, I got to figure out my leadership style, that's enough for today. If you were like, man, I didn't even know there were 3 commitment types and I'm going to communicate to my team differently, that's something you can take back. If you want additional information, if we need additional dialogue, if we need to clear anything up, send me the email. We'll set the appointment. We'll talk and we'll make you better. My job is to ensure that your business doesn't fail and that you grow in the ways that you see in your mind.
Amazing. Tell us a little bit more, the 1 minute pitch on the business that you're doing. You help people. How does that work?
So at the business hospital, when you come in, you're a patient. We go off of a copay system. We are 2 nonprofits and a for-profit. The for-profit is for acute pain when people have it, really high level functioning things that we have to execute. But through our business aid, which is like Medicaid here in the US, is that we treat businesses for a calendar year on every element of their business. So if you're not making money, if your marketing's bad, if your human capital is bad, if you got legal issues, if you don't understand how to control your operations, if you need to build a thingamajig or a flipper tripper, whatever it is that you're trying to do, we come in and we help with that. So between myself and my team of practitioners in our hospital wings, we will nurse your business. So we work with you every day. You have 365-day, 24/7 support. So you're never alone. And then inside of that, we're just high level, high functioning experts that know every aspect of business. And then our goal is to make sure that you don't fail, since businesses notoriously fail in the United States has a 67% failure rate, and we're much better than the rest of the world. So we know what the rest of the world is dealing with as well when it comes to commerce. And so we want to build everyone else up in that instance.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I thought you not only hit the goal, you well exceeded it. Love your presentation. Got sucked in again. So thank you. When is the next? Is this a quarterly conversation that we have?
We have a quarterly business summit, health summit. So that in 3 months from now, I'm gonna be talking about something else. Now, here's the thing: if you want to be selfish, and I implore you to be selfish, just forget everybody else and just think about put your own oxygen mask on first. If there's something you need help with, write the Global Chamber and say, hey, can we kind of talk about this? And whatever you say, we'll talk about that.
Fantastic.
Be selfish, y'all.
Thanks, everybody. If you'd like to now shift over to a sales conversation, the Globinar is actually in another link. Go to the Global Chamber, and I don't know, maybe Jem's already put the link on that in here. If you want to jump over, either click on the link in the chat or just go to the Global Chamber event calendar, click on and jump into the different Zoom link. Thank you for the inspiration. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Dr. Baker. That was great.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for joining in today. Thanks, Demetris. 2 meetings in a row.